All right, let's get started. We're starting a little late here. Sorry about that. This is Graphics 103, Lyrics and Slides. You guys all know me. I'm Erin. I'm the production coordinator here at Cornerstone, and then also oversee all of our graphics and ProPresenter components in the building. So today we are going to focus on, obviously, lyrics and slides, but doing that in context with songs, so creating song documents, arrangements, slide labels, slide structure, all that stuff. So most of you don't spend a ton of time creating songs and stuff because we do that for you a lot of the time around here. And so we're going to explore some of that today so that you guys are familiar with kind of the back end of how we get all of that structure in place and what we're thinking through when we set up new songs. So we are going to live, just as a reference point, kind of in the lyrics section of this guide that I put out in the fall. So to start, I'm just going to walk straight through the slide structure guidelines, and feel free to throw out questions as we go. We can talk back and forth, and some of this we won't come back to, so just go ahead and ask your questions as we're going. So first thing under here is timing. So I'm going to give you two kind of disclaimers with timing. One, this bullet point does not encompass everything that I could tell you about lyric timing. So there's a lot of vision behind that we try to communicate, and we may dig into that more at a later date. But for now, these are kind of just a couple quick tips. Second disclaimer is kind of why do we put it with structure guidelines? And that's because the timing and the structure of the slide go hand in hand. So when we're putting the slides together originally, we want to be thinking about the flow of how it's going to work with the song when the operator is actually running through the slides in a rehearsal as we're following with the band and the recording. So it's really important to think about all of that at once when you're starting making the slides from the beginning. So a couple tips that I would give you, you guys know this, we want the lyrics to be ahead. It's really important to be ahead over behind if you're going to lean one way or the other so that those in the crowd can follow along with the music. Always be thinking about just the new person, or if it's a new song, the fact that people may not know the song. Maybe it's their first time in church. Be thinking about that person. When do they need the words in order to engage if they're even maybe uncomfortable with what's happening? Because they're going to choose somewhere to focus, and likely at some point it's going to be the words because that's what's moving, and our eyes are drawn to not only just visuals but reading. So like, when I highlight this, you automatically are drawn to read what's there, right? It's kind of the same thing when we're putting lyrics up on the screens. So be thinking about what that person needs. If you need like a point, like if you had never seen this song before, what do you need to be able to follow along with it, to be able to feel the music out and to learn the song as you go. Second point, we keep our lyric slides at 1 to 2 lines and think a lot about the phrasing of the song. You're a little bit limited just with the text size and the text box size sometimes. And sometimes it's really easy to split up the lines, and sometimes it's not super easy to split them up because it can become really awkward when you're trying to keep it to 1 or 2 lines. Another point with that is sometimes we do prefer 1-line slides if it fits with the song. So don't be afraid to keep them at 1 line. Recent song, if you guys know it, we introduced So Will I at Salt Company. It has a lot of breathing room between each line, so almost the entire song is 1-line slides. And that's okay, because that's what fits the song. So we can treat each song thinking about the music and have it be kind of a unique combination of things. So if an exact phrase or line of lyrics is repeated, we do one of 2 things. We either split it into 2 slides, and we have 2 slides in a row that are exactly the same. One example below, which you probably can't see super well, is Good, Good Father. And the reason we did it that way is because the song moves so quickly. So we do have it separated out into individual slides. Another way we can do it is we can split it with a comma. So if there's just not a ton of breath between the repeating phrases, or even just if it fits, like sometimes it's such a long phrase that even though if it's repeating, we can't do a comma and include it again. The point of this is just for keeping the slides and the visuals clean so that we don't have stacked lyrics that are exactly the same. Does that make sense? Cool. So blank slides, I think all of you have worked with arrangements for the most part. So we have blank slides and instrumental slides set up in every document that we use to break up sections when there's an instrumental or just enough space that we need to go to a blank slide before we go back into lyrics. So it's kind of up to you to a degree of like when you need that and when you don't as an operator. General rule would be if there's more than a few seconds, you're going to need that space. You don't want to keep the old slide up too long where the crowd thinks that you're going to repeat it again, but we also don't want the new lyrics up so soon that it's just really confusing when to come in. So it can be a little different depending on the song, but that's the general point of those instrumental slides. Another thing we want to do is always have the next slide available for those on stage as early as we can. So when we're ending one song and going into another song, we want to get that blank intro slide. We want to click on that as soon as it's possible so that the band has that reference of where they're going. If the vocalist is having a moment where they have just no idea what the lyrics are for the first verse, they're nervous, whatever, we want to get that up there as soon as we can so that they have that reference point. Last thing here is just a reminder that we do just dissolve at 0 seconds between our lyric slides. That's just kind of the default here that we've landed on. Any questions about structure so far? Awesome. Okay, so we're going to quickly talk grammar. Who among you feel like you just love grammar in the English language? Oh, I've got 2. 2? Oh, man. Oh, man. Okay, so we're going to just go through these real quick. This will just give you a sense of, like, why do we sometimes include this, sometimes not include this? Why do we never use periods? All that stuff. So this is kind of the general structure that we follow. Commas are probably the most inconsistent thing in our library right now. And that's something that I'm kind of looking at, working on. Something to reference is always the lyric charts or the song select sheets that we have in Planning Center. And when we import, we'll get to that later, but when we import the grammar that they have, the artist has, pulls that way, and then we can kind of see what they had initially. But commas are the hardest thing. We do use them, like in this example with Jesus I Come, to split those repeating lines once in a while. Otherwise, this is kind of grammatically correct is not always the case. I'm working on this. I'm trying to figure out something a little bit more consistent. I'm pulling them out more than leaving them in to give you like some idea of when we would use a comma. Yeah. Any questions on that specifically?
So commas like in between, like if it's a
Yeah.
liner, or is it at the end of one line and then?
Yeah, so we'll get to it. There would never be any punctuation at the end of the line.
Okay.
So no periods, nothing at the end. There's no periods in our entire library. Kyle.
So, the highlight says to avoid duplicate phrases within the one line, but, we were talking earlier how, like, if there's duplicate lyrics, usually we split them up into slides. So could you give me kind of an example of, like, duplicate phrases within one line?
Yeah, so that would be that, it's probably hard to see.
Oh.
The Jesus I Come. Let me see if I can find that song really quick. You can see it better. So this is an example where we'd use a comma to divide that repeating line rather than split it out.
Okay.
And that's just because of timing, like it comes too fast.
Yeah, it comes pretty fast and it just kind of fits with the song, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, so commas kind of come to also, when I make a new song, I think a ton about the music. So sometimes it's more just what feels good with the way that it pauses. So you may see like a comma. One example of when it would be grammatically correct that we would use it is if we have the same word twice in a row, which I have death was arrested up here, and we do that. So free. So we would use a comma there, and that would be like a grammatically correct example of using using a comma. It's not going to be every time it would be grammatically correct, because if it was every time, we would have commas everywhere. There would be so many commas. So it's more just like, we want the commas there when it's going to help people be able to understand it and follow along well, and to make it not clunky. But we don't want to overuse them to where it's distracting. Like, I don't know if this is a pause. I don't know if this is just because it is the grammatically correct way to do it. So there may not be, like, if we end a line with Lord, where it would be grammatically correct to do comma Lord, but we leave that out because it just flows as like one line straight through. There's no pause, there's no, does that make sense? So that would be kind of one distinction between when we use it and when we don't, yet both examples are grammatically correct. So I need to figure out a different way to explain that in the like written doc, but that would be examples of both. So maybe Safari. Okay, again, no punctuation at the end of the line, just a standard rule. And then we do not include quotes, exclamation points, question marks, or any of that stuff. So just to keep it clean is really the point of that. We do capitalize the word of every line. That is not standard at churches across the U.S. A lot of churches are doing all caps. Some churches do all lowercase except for like references to God. This is just kind of how we do it. So just fun fact. We do want to capitalize all nouns and possessive nouns referencing God. So Savior, His, Lord, Your, Almighty, One, anything like that. It can get a little bit tricky depending on the song to distinguish between God and man. So we have to look at the whole context of the song to figure out, is this you, or is it you from God at us, you? That would be one example of that. And there was a song, I can't think of it because I was going to use it as an example. There's a song where that actually is super confusing, and I realized we had it wrong, and we had been using it wrong for a long time. It was actually the other way. So you have to be careful with we, me, you, us. Those words can get like a little bit tricky. So keep an eye out for that. Most of that should be set up for you, as we've said. We don't capitalize words like name, heaven, earth, majesty. So even if we're saying God is holy in a song, we're not going to capitalize holy, okay? And then this is more of a structural tip, but it also tends to come up when you're in there editing stuff in like a quick edit mode. We do want to watch out for blank lines and extra spaces because the templates don't fix that. So if you are in here and you accidentally add a line at the top, it's going to show lower than your next slide. And the template, even if we reapply the template, it does not fix that. That is not good. Let's not do that anymore. It doesn't fix it. So keep an eye out for any slides that have those extra spaces or lines. Sometimes there's an extra space at the beginning of the top line. It's just the way that when you're going through editing, sometimes it's just an automatic, like if you don't clear that out as you're typing. So just watch out for it. All it means in that case, that one's less obvious, is that top line is not going to be centered compared to the line below it. Any other grammar questions?
I did have a question about like when words are like abbreviated kind of, or they have like apostrophes in them.
Yeah.
When do you decide that you want to?
Yep, so we have to keep the original grammar, phrasing, intent in mind. But if Hillsong releases a song with the word Savior and they do the O-U-R, we don't use a U because that's not standard for the United States, right? But they're in Australia or whatever. So they write Savior that way. So we would change Savior. Same thing with like apostrophes. If the word don't, something that would be standard for our just everyday speaking language is okay. But if there's an apostrophe in,
Like error, for example, like when they do E apostrophe ER.
like air, like in a hymn, if it's a hymn, yeah, we'd probably keep it if we're going to sing it that way and that's
Or
the
like
recording.
victory. Like that's
Probably not. Probably not. So see, this is where like it's a lot based on preference, but we want it to be clear. So my reasoning behind some of that is just making it clear and easy to read. So sometimes the hymns do need that, like on an air, if that is truly the word that we're using, we want to leave it with the apostrophe and not just take that out, because then it'd be like, what is that word? Ear? Like, what are we saying? But if there's an apostrophe in some random word where they've just taken out a letter, like victory, we're going to make that the full word and take out that apostrophe. But standard contractions like don't, I'm trying to think of real song examples. But standard contractions we'd use in everyday language and recognize, we would just go ahead and leave that. We wouldn't change don't to do not, if that makes sense. We wouldn't change the words, but we can tweak those grammar things to have some consistency, as long as we're not changing the actual intent or the meaning of the song. Does that help? Kyle?
What about the, like the word O, like O, our Lord? For one O versus OH, is that usually like, you just change it depending on what the song and like?
Yeah, I usually base that on the original lyrics. There's no like right or wrong way to do the O. The OH is a little more modern, so usually on newer songs they'll use OH, and hymns will often be just a single O. We do always, it's not noted because it's not super often, but if there is just a single O in the middle of a line, we do capitalize that, because it just looks weird to have a lowercase o by itself. Yeah, so I usually use the lyric sheets in that case to just determine, because there's not like a hard, fast way to do it. Even for like our language, it can be either one and mean the same thing. So, all right. So those are our grammar rules. So before we jump to making a new song document, I want to go over slide labels and arrangements. So there are two types of slide labels that can be applied to any lyric slide. One is simply called a slide label, and one is called a group label. So we find those in Preferences, is where they're set up under this Label tab. So here are the slide labels. I just made a few today on this computer so we could show an example, and here are the group labels. And you can create any label that you want with any color that you want. And then same thing for the group labels. We could add another tag if we needed it, as an example.
Can you show me how to get back to that? I'm sorry.
Yep. So it's just in Preferences, which is here. And then it'll normally pop up in General, but it's just the label icon at the top. So the main auditorium has a bunch of these slide labels with Doors, Welcome, Series Graphic. In there, red is Weekend and blue is Salt Company, just as an example. These are our group labels, which are primarily for songs. At some point when ProPresenter added arrangements, somebody here picked colors for the music. So this is just what we do. Verses are blue, pre-chorus is pink, bridge is orange, so on. The instrumentals and then intro and outro that's on every song are black. I honestly don't know who picked that, but we've just stuck with it. It seems to work pretty well. Some places may do like a different color for every verse, but I think it's a little bit easier to follow when all of your types of sequences in your songs are set the same. So the main distinction here between slides and groups is a slide you would generally use just to apply to one individual slide, and most of the time the way we use it is to assign like that particular action. So it'll go on a actual media piece, a video, a photo, a actual welcome slide, whatever. Whereas the groups we use for the music, and they can be one or more slides grouped together. You can use them multiple times in that same document, and they're connected to that arrangements feature. So that's the difference. I want to show you, this is just an example doc I made. So this is the verse 1 group here, and it links all of the slides following when you set it up the first time. This is a chorus group. This is an individual slide. We could do a slide label. We can do a group label, and it will do it creates the group for the rest of what's behind it if there's not a group. But you can see here that you can have a group and a slide label on the same slide. We don't do that super often because we sort of split. Slides are kind of for media, groups are for the songs. But you can do that if you want to make a note. You can also apply any slide label that you want with any color that you want, and you don't have to save it in that library of labels that we keep. So if you needed a note on a slide that would just be kind of a one-time thing, you can add it that way. It will save with the document though. So if you do that within a song, it's going to show up the next time we use a song. So just keep that in mind. Try to clear those out if you ever do a note, but it can occasionally be handy if you're doing communion or something like that where the song is split differently than normal, just a note for yourself like stop, or whatever it is. This is our break, just to kind of indicate that something is out of the ordinary. But it will save with the file, so try to clear those out if you do that, just so it's not confusing the next person. So our groups are songs. They're set here. When you right-click on a slide, the group label functions will pop up, and the slide label functions are here. You can remove it either one at any time by saying none. So we don't want that group anymore. We can just take it off. So that's kind of your undo if you've set something you're trying to get rid of. So if that was our note and we wanted to take it off, we would say none and it's gone. Any questions about labels? John?
So if we were doing a song that had more verses than we'd ever done before, we would need to create a new verse 7 or something like that in the preferences?
Yep. Yep, you could do that. You could also create one here, say other. If you did have a verse 7, you could say that this would automatically save it in those labels. You could also uncheck it if you're like, this is probably the only time we're going to have a verse 7. So you can use that label, but it doesn't save in that kind of master list. So either way would be fine. Anything else? Yeah?
So, these are the group labels kind of group the slides together. How do we edit the groups? The content on the group?
So when you add a slide at the bottom, it connects to the last group that you have in the document. Doesn't matter what it is, but we can change it or we can take it off. So I'm going to take it off. If you needed to add a slide in the middle of the group, you can drag your blank slide here. That teal line is going to show you it's adding it to the group in the middle. So now you have 4 in that verse. If you already have something typed here and you want to add it to the end of a group, right here, I don't know if you can see, that orange arrow, it wants to add it to the front of that group. Or if you move this way, it's going to add it to the end of your chorus group. Can you see that difference? Or it'll go in the middle. Or here, it should stay by itself. So that's kind of how you would add. And if you do edit any text in a group, it's going to change the text every time you use that group in the sequence. So you can't just, in a group, individually change one slide. It's going to change it every time because they're connected. Yeah?
So if we want to use these labels, if we want to use arrangement mode, they have to be group labels, not slide labels?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, arrangements pulls only from groups. So you can have slide labels layered over the top of the group, but arrangements is only going to reference the group labels. Yeah, good questions. Anything else? Good, good, cool. So let's talk about arrangements a little bit more. I'm going to use Death Was Arrested as my example today. So just a reminder, this is the arrangements button to open it up. What it's showing in the top bar is our master. So the goal with a master is to keep it kind of clean. What I shoot for is to have the intro at the front and the instrumental and outro at the end, and then have the verses, choruses, and so on appear in order as they come up in the song. So it's not super critical that it's exactly that way, but that's kind of how you should expect it. If you open that up, that's what you should see. So what it's showing us below is just the master. This is every slide in that particular document in the group order that we see at the top. This is kind of this dial opens up the arrangements that we have. So we see that the check, we're in master. These are the arrangements that we have set up already. So we can go to weekend. Here's some conference arrangements that were a little bit different. And you can add as many as you want. If you want a brand new arrangement, you can go here. I'm just going to call it test. What it's going to do is it's going to give you a copy. Your starting point is going to be your master. So that's where it's nice to have the slides be in the general order that they appear in the song. Because then if you're like listening to a new recording and you need to just rearrange it, you're probably starting from a good spot where you're not moving everything around. You're not having to click and drag everything back and forth. It's kind of a good place to start. The final thing here is our arrangement manager. Opens up this box. We can add. New arrangement does the exact same thing as if we added it over here. So it's going to make us a copy of the master. We can duplicate, which is probably the most useful feature ever in arrangements. It wasn't available in Pro 5, it was an addition in Pro 6, and it's beautiful. Because when you're trying to have multiple ministries in the same venue, you don't want them using, like we don't want Salt and Weekend using the same arrangements in the main auditorium because we have overlapping services and rehearsals. So Weekend would do their rehearsal, set their arrangement. If Salt was using the same song that week, that op would come in, potentially change the arrangement, do that on Thursday, then the Weekend op would come back on Sunday, and the arrangement they set in rehearsal would be messed up from Salt. So that's why we use multiple. But the really convenient thing about the duplicate is if Salt has been using a song and we have like a standard arrangement based on the recording, then Weekend's going to do it. All I do is duplicate the Salt arrangement. And then that's where we start from, and you can label it whatever you want. So I would just duplicate Salt, call it Weekend, and then we would have that starting point would be set, and I wouldn't have to like go through and match it exactly. The minus button or the delete key gets rid of all these random things I've created. And that is basically that window. Any arrangement, confusion, yeah.
Like, so, I know on some songs like we have multiple arrangements within the ministry. Like, when's it appropriate to just edit the standard arrangement, and when is it to like make a new arrangement? Yep.
So I would say if you're tweaking just a couple things, like maybe you're adding a chorus at the end, whatever, totally appropriate to just tweak that song. If we have a bunch of different arrangements or like recordings that we use, it is extremely appropriate to indicate the artist. So in this case, in Christ Alone, and these are all very different, so that we don't have to like do all of those edits every time. So you can see, and this is an example of one that has like some choruses and things. Not every version uses a chorus. Sometimes we use the chorus, sometimes we don't use the chorus. So that would be an instance where I would just make new ones and note the artist. I can't think of any other way to label it in between. So what I do in Planning Center is just look at, I know off the top of my head in Christ Alone has all these different versions. So I will just look at what they've pulled in Planning Center and say, okay, this is Christian Stanfill is Passion. So if it says that, I choose Passion, and then we should be at a better starting point than if we just kept the same one and we're changing it drastically every time. Trying to think of other instances. Sometimes if I'm, like for the conference, I was here during their rehearsals. We did some rehearsals here in the main auditorium prior to the event, and I had the playlists on our graphics computer so that I could follow along, and they could also have it, the band could have it on the screens. And then I was just going to export to this laptop. But sometimes what we do for the conference is create a new arrangement if they're changing things drastically. Because if I just use Salt, sometime between that rehearsal and the event, Salt may need that document. And if I've added 20 bridges because they're doing some extended 12-minute version of a song, which is great, not at all, not at all. But what we need is a unique arrangement so that we're not screwing up our standard arrangements, because honestly, we will never do the 12-minute medley here at Salt Company, right? So I don't want to screw up that to where Cole comes in and he's like, honestly, Erin, what was going on that we have like a 120 slide document happening right now? Yeah, so that would be the instance where we would do that. Sometimes there's a special like Easter, sometimes there's an acoustic version, so you see like an acoustic, that's a really good one, or like a communion one where we're doing cutting it at weird spots. If there's dramatic changes, I'll just make a new one. It's okay. Like if you are like, oh, the band's just making a couple tweaks, and then a few minutes later, oh, I've actually completely redone this. Whoops. It's okay. We have a master library that I can always, if it's like super crazy, we can always replace the file back to like what the original recording would have been and kind of clean it up a little bit. So don't feel too bad about it. But if you notice like, I already know there's going to be a ton of changes, feel free to add a second version. You'll occasionally see like a TSC2, TSC1. I don't know what those mean, but obviously somebody was like, this is crazy, I'm going to make another one, and that's fine. We can clean that stuff up later. I would rather have more arrangements and do less confusing editing than not use them, and then the next person's like, what happened last time? What happened? All right, any other arrangement things? Josiah's feeling good. He never does graphics, but that's okay. All right, so creating a song first. Nope, not yet. I give you two more quick things, and I've got 20 minutes, so let's jam here. I want to show you editor views. So there's a couple options for editing. I just wanted to give you a picture of that. This is huge. So I like this editor view. It gives me a really good image of the slide. That's this icon right here that's open. It's great for when you're setting up the slides originally and you're trying to listen along with the song. And then I want to show you reflow. Reflow is another way to do it. This arrow here is like right-clicking on the slide in any other context. So you can change the groups, anything like that. Same thing over here. And it's really handy if you are trying to take like a old file that has like 4 or 5 lines of text and you're trying to split it out, because you can tell it to insert a slide break. So it's kind of an interesting, I don't use it a ton, I should probably use it more. It's a good format for the original setup because it's really easy to split slides out and to manipulate the phrasing of the text. It's just the only thing I don't like is a little more difficult to see in the larger view what it actually looks like on the slide. But just some quick things, and then a reminder that right-click quick edit, if you're doing just a really small text tweak, that's generally the best spot to do that. So let's do creating a song. How many of you have actually had to type or create a song? Yeah. Yep. Okay, so 2 ways that I do it are, more recently have started using the Song Select import. So if you don't know, Song Select is a component of our CCLI licensing that integrates with ProPresenter to allow you to import lyrics from their kind of the master lyric sheets, and then you don't have to type them line by line. So it will come up the first time, for anyone like out at a plant or whatever, it will come up the first time logged out, and you just need a Song Select account to log in with to access the library. So if any of you are at a plant someday, we don't have network here today, but all you need is like the worship leader's login or something like that, and it will hold, can't type. It will, oh boy. Bummer. Yay. What was I talking about? It will hold, it'll hold the login. It doesn't log itself out. I've never seen it log itself out. So like I'm just logged in on all of the graphics computers here. So once you'd get that, if you needed to request a login from somebody, you wouldn't need to ask them for their password every time. I would assume if we did like a major upgrade to the computer or something like that, it might log out, but small updates, it doesn't. So we're going to continue to use Death Was Arrested as an example. So you just search for the song you want. Occasionally, the title will have like, I don't know, there'll be like 12 versions of something. In this case, it's just one, and we can preview the lyrics. So if it did pop up with like 5 or 6 different artist versions of this song, you could preview and make sure that you're getting the version that you want. Occasionally a hymn or something like that will have a bunch, so then you can look through and you can see the names of the artists as well, which should match the lyric sheets on PCO. Not always, I don't know why, but that's a good guide as well. So import, and then you can choose paragraph or line break. We go line break at 2, that's the max number of lines that we want it to pull. This is the size of the document. It's defaulting at what we've done last time. You can choose a category if you want. Template is automatically this one, which apparently is goofy on here, so we'll have to deal with that in a second. And then we just import. This is huge. I don't know why. 93. Side note, editing a template. We don't have time to talk about it, sorry. That's what we want. So that's our center. So this is how it pulls. It's giving me a -1 because we already have the song in the library. And then this is what it does. So it will match, I don't fully understand the coding, but somehow it matches when it knows like there's a verse 1, verse 2, chorus 1. If you have an exact group label set up that matches what it thinks it's supposed to be, it sets the group labels for you. In this case, we don't have just a bridge. We call them bridge 1, 2, 3. So it doesn't match that because it just called it bridge. Does that make sense? So the first thing that I do is I add 3 slides at the end and assign any groups that didn't come through that way. I make a intro slide, a instrumental slide, and a outro slide. Then I open that arrangement bar, and because I'm OCD, I move the intro over here. So now we kind of have our master to start with that has the slides we need. And at this point, I would open the editor, or you can use Reflow or whatever. I would listen through the song and then decide where any like additional slide breaks need to come. If we need to split lines out that already exist, which in this case, yes, the chorus gets split out. So just to give you an example of me screwing it up. There we go. And then I would copy, and I'm sorry, I don't have more time to detail this. But if you know the song, you know that the chorus looks like that in the end, and it will save everything for us. So I would be listening to the recording, usually have the lyric sheet open on another computer. You can use the same one. And then in the end, it looks like this. Does that kind of make sense? Any questions on importing? All that structure stuff comes into play. Sometimes I don't know why I split it out the way I do, and I can't explain it, I'm sorry. But over time, you kind of get the hang of stuff. Usually you'll see choruses and bridges split out more. Depends on the context, if it's a continuing thought. Those are just some of the things that I'm thinking about when we split it up. But this is kind of what we shoot for. Then I would add arrangements once I had kind of a master good to go. So then it would be ready for rehearsal. The other way you can do it is if you run into like you have an original song, or if the artist is not copyrighted with CCLI, their work will not be in Song Select. So Austin Stone's songs are not in Song Select because they're not currently copyrighted that way. So you'd have to type those line by line. And down at the bottom, we can add a new document. Kind of some of the same similar file options to get it started with. And then you can use any of those editor modes to copy from lyric sheets, recordings, whatever, kind of the same process to set slides. It takes a little bit longer, but honestly, sometimes the CCLI stuff is so messy, I should have just typed it. So either or works. Usually the import's a little bit faster. At least you have the bare bone structure and you don't have to worry about making your own typos as much, more just editing what's already there and following along with it. So it's a little bit easier that way. Let me see if I missed anything.
Question.
Yeah.
So when you're starting from scratch like this, is it easier to, you say do it line by line, but would it be, do you mean like do like the chorus line by line, and then like you have your chorus and then you chunk it like that? You know what I'm saying?
So I like this view, and I would probably be in a hurry most of the time. So I would probably open one slide. It pops up with the text, and you can change the template here. So if you had a weird template, you can apply something else in the editor. I would probably have the recording and the lyric sheet, assuming we have one, open on my laptop or somewhere else. And I would play the song while looking at the sheet and typing it. So I would have the sheet up and the recording playing, and I would pause it a lot and type as I go. And then once I had what I would kind of consider my master, I would close out of this, and then I'd do the arrangement by listening through it again and kind of checking for errors and things that I don't like or want to redo. So worship music is predictable. Sorry. Sorry, it's a little bit predictable. So oftentimes, even looking at the sheet, you can say, I have a general idea of what this is probably going to be, even if I've never heard it. And it may be different than you thought, but most of the time, if there's 6 lines in your verse, you're probably going to end up with two line slides and 2 one-line slides, because it's probably phrased in 3. And it may not even be in 6/8 or 3/4, but it's probably phrased in 3 and there's a pause somewhere or whatever. So I already know that. So I'm either going to do 2 lines here, 1 line, 2 line, 1 line, or it's going to be even weirder, and maybe this happens once in a while, where you have 1 line and then 2, 1, 2. What a Beautiful Name is like that. And Crowns has something a little bit goofy where there's a 1 line first, or maybe not anymore. I think it changed. Oops. Does that help? Kind of that process. And then a lot of times stuff is in 2 and 4, so you can kind of see, yeah, this is probably going to be a 2-slide chorus or whatever. And you'll know real quick, like, particularly if you know music, but you'll know real quick, is this fast? I mean, sometimes I start a song and I'm like, nope, can't keep up with it, gotta pause, and then I might type some out and then listen and follow along, and it just kind of back and forth. If it's really slow, sometimes I can keep up with it and I race against myself. Ooh, can I type this while listening and not have to pause it? I don't know. I live an exciting life. I live an exciting life. Okay, any questions at all about new songs, slides, arrangements? John?
So sometimes, this doesn't happen super often, but they like tag like part of a different song in a song.
Isn't that annoying?
Yeah. So is it better like to just create a tag within that song, or is it sometimes better to like have the song separately in like the playlist, or?
Yeah, I've done both. If it's me operating it, I pull the other song because I'm lazy. And I can remember to go to the next song, and I don't have to worry about communicating that because it's just kind of my choice. If I'm setting it up for somebody else and it's like gonna just be a couple tags, I will pull them as a tag. It's really annoying though, because we really don't want tags of other songs saved, right? So either way is fine. If it's gonna be more extended, what you can do is you can make a tag arrangement and pull the song. Like, what would we tag? Somebody give me an example.
Nothing but the blood.
With one voice, Nothing But the Blood is also a good example. If you needed, if you were tagging, I think Dana's done this, tag like a verse 1 of Nothing But the Blood on like a random song. One really fast way to copy is you can copy the whole slide and paste it in another document so you can copy it It seems to work better if you copy with a click and then you do like Command V to paste. It won't hold the group or anything, but it'll copy the text exactly. So that's a really fast way to pull it into the document that you need. And then just label it, as a tag. I think if it's just going to be like one refrain of something, one chorus, one verse, go ahead and copy it just so you remember. But if they're going to use up to maybe like 5 or 10 slides of another song, just pull that song and make an arrangement for what you need. Yeah. Anything else?
I can ask one more question.
Okay.
So if we get like the Worship Leader decides to spontaneously add a song like during the service, when do you like keep it black? And when do you pull the song up? Like when do you decide to pull up the lyrics?
Yeah, so at the conference, we added a song about 2 minutes before the night of worship, and we had never done the song. So I didn't pull the song because I was like, what? I don't even know this song. So I didn't pull the song because I would have been preparing it during the night of worship at the conference, and I'm not going to even go there with screwing stuff up. And I had no idea, are they doing just choruses? It was like overcome, like 2 minutes. They're like, band's loading. I'm like, we don't have that. Like, what do you mean? I had to make Nate repeat the title like 3 times. I was like, what song? Because, there's just no way to do that. So if it's something we've never done, don't worry about it at all. If you know about it ahead of time that it's possible and you want to have it ready, that's more than okay with me. I'm just going to say it. This is going to be a SALT issue, not a weekend issue. Okay? I don't know if any other ministries maybe periodically would tag something.
Not spontaneously.
It's just SALT. So, and it's not, it's great. It's fine. But I really wouldn't get super worried about finding it. It's just stressful. And now that, even SALT is using both computers, so now in order to have the lower third, you'd need to do both, and then you'd need to try to make sure that when you're firing, it matches on the other one. Or do you just not have lower thirds, but you pulled the document, so now you're firing a different song on lower thirds because it's not in order. It's just, it's complicated enough that it's okay to skip it. But if you feel like you want to, more power to you, like go for it. But if there's not a lot of time and you don't have any idea what part of the song they're going to use, I wouldn't mess with it. But if you've heard, like, we may do 2 choruses of How He Loves or Nothing But the Blood or whatever, and you want to have that ready to go, yeah, absolutely. And if it's a little late in that case, people can tell when it's spontaneous. So it's okay if it's not there or when, mostly because usually the band isn't really quite all together, but people can tell, and it's fine if it's either not there or a little bit slow as you're kind of trying to feel out what they're going to do, what the tempo might be, that sort of thing, because it may feel quite a bit different than a normal run of the song with the click and everything. Awesome. One thing I wanted to mention more for the recording for the network is I do have a master library with all of our active songs in Drive that some of us share to just download a song when we need it in a different venue. But if you guys go out on plants or for anyone in the network, I'm happy to share that out for access for anywhere. So Salt City has access to it. I think Ankeny and Des Moines have access to it, but that way it kind of saves some typing at other plants. Or if you're ever at an event and you don't have the song, like, just let me know and I can give you access to that. 'Cause that's much easier than trying to either prepare it again or get like logged on to our internal network to steal the file. So it's much faster. Any other questions? I think I'm through everything.
Actually, I have a follow-up question. Okay, so back to timing and being ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with the times at the end of the song where like the song is finished formally, but the worship leader leads it kind of like a cappella type situation. And I know that like sometimes you're like, okay, I'm not going to do I'm just going to leave it blank, or I feel comfortable displaying the slides. When you feel comfortable displaying the slides, and like you kind of get to that end, and it's like, okay, are they gonna do another one? Is that an acceptable time to kind of like maybe come in a little bit later? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
'Cause,
Yes.
yeah.
I would rather you come in a little, if you're following a spontaneous thing, I'd rather you come in a little late than to put up lyrics their band's not actually going to sing. Now, if you are very confident, the crowd will follow you, which is kind of fun. Yeah. And generally, that's also okay because the band, well, we're going to sing it again. Like, that's fine. But I would say, yeah, that's definitely acceptable to be a little late over going into something that we're not actually all going to sing together. So, yeah, that's a great example of when to be a little bit behind. And we may or may not, I may or may not make 104 all about timing. We'll see. We'll see. I have a lot of notes and thoughts on it, so I may try to get more clear guidelines on how to vision-wise think about all of that, which I think would be really good. It's just very hard to verbalize. So, yeah, we may go into that more, but all right, well, we're going to wrap up because Zach is going to do lighting next and he's going to do in here. So if you're staying, please do. If not, thanks for coming. And let me know if you have any questions down the road.